A massive alien fleet suddenly appeared at the edge of the solar system, its shapes and lights unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Scientists and astronomers were the first to notice the unusual movement, their monitors flashing alarms in every observatory across the planet. In response, Earth's defense agencies scrambled, sending urgent messages between military commanders, space agencies, and government officials. Everyone assumed the worst, that war had come to Earth, and survival would depend on missiles, laser systems, and armored fleets. Yet as the alien vessels transmitted their first message, the world froze. Across every screen in every language, the words appeared. Humans, surrender immediately. Your species is unstable, unfit for interstellar expansion. Panic spread through cities, offices, homes, and schools. People whispered in fear, and some cried openly, imagining their cities destroyed in seconds. Governments held emergency meetings behind closed doors, trying to figure out a plan that could protect billions. Scientists calculated the destructive power of the alien weapons, estimating how continents could be erased within moments. Military leaders activated fleets preparing for a battle that seemed inevitable. But amid all the chaos and fear, something remarkable began to happen. Humanity did not panic in the way the aliens expected. Ordinary people, from students in dormitories to workers in offices and factories, began sharing jokes, memes, and humorous observations about the invaders at the edge of the solar system. They drew cartoons of aliens tripping over their own technology or misunderstood Earth customs. Social media exploded with playful speculation about what the aliens might eat for breakfast, or how they might misunderstand human culture. Governments and scientists watched in surprise as this calm spread, not from generals or commanders, but from ordinary citizens who seemed determined to meet the unknown with curiosity rather than panic. In a way, the fear that had gripped the world became mixed with a strange sense of humor, a quiet resistance against hopelessness. Amid the blinking alerts and emergency broadcasts, people were finding ways to laugh together, to share hope in the face of potential destruction. The aliens expected silence, trembling, and immediate submission. Instead, they were met with something they could not understand: resilience in the simplest form, human calm, shared humor, and an unwillingness to let fear control them. On Earth, while missiles were prepped and satellite systems readied for defense, humanity's first response was not aggression, but a united spirit, a shared sense that, even in the face of the unknown, they would face it together. And in that moment, as the alien fleet hovered silently in the void, humanity showed something far more powerful than weapons: a quiet, unshakable determination to survive, to think, and to remain human. Earth's leaders met in a secure underground facility, far from cameras and the anxious eyes of the public. The room was filled with the most brilliant minds: diplomats, scientists, strategists, and space command officers, all bracing for what seemed inevitable: war. Monitors displayed the alien fleet, their massive shapes hovering silently at the edge of the solar system, blinking like cold stars, while alerts and warnings filled the room with tension. For a moment, the natural instinct was to launch Earth's missiles, to strike first before being destroyed. But slowly, a different idea took shape. One by one, the leaders considered the possibility of talking instead of firing. Could humanity survive without war by simply using communication? The idea was radical, even frightening. They drafted a proposal, careful in every word, emphasizing reasoning, logic, and the shared potential for understanding. The message would be clear. We do not wish to fight, but we are capable of defending ourselves if necessary. Let us speak. Once the transmission was ready, Earth sent the signal through the largest arrays available, beaming it directly toward the alien fleet. There was an immediate silence across human communications. On alien monitors, the message appeared in bright symbols and strange tones, a language they could partially decipher. Confusion rippled through the alien ranks. They had expected fear, panic, or immediate compliance. They did not expect a species they considered inferior to ask for dialogue instead of surrender. Questions rose in alien command chambers. Why would these humans choose words over weapons? What did it mean that they did not strike first? Meanwhile, back on Earth, scientists and diplomats waited, knowing every second counted. The first responses came in, cautious but readable. The aliens asked questions, probing the humans for hidden traps or threats. Humanity answered calmly, without aggression, explaining their principles, that they valued reasoning over violence, empathy over dominance, and that they would not attack unless directly provoked. This simple declaration sent ripples through both sides. Tension arose not from hatred, but from a clash of perception versus reality. The aliens had assumed that humans were weak, chaotic, and incapable of organized thought beyond survival instincts. Yet here was a species willing to extend trust, to speak first, and to negotiate when the logical choice seemed to be fight or flight. Humanity, in its quiet determination, had flipped the expectations entirely. Across Earth, people watched the sky, some afraid, some hopeful, all aware that something extraordinary was happening. It was not a victory yet, but a first step, a test of patience, courage, and communication. Even the youngest child looking up at the stars could sense the shift. The aliens were learning that humans were not predictable, not weak, and not entirely bound by fear. And on Earth, leaders realized that for the first time, their greatest weapon might not be missiles or fleets, but words, clarity, and the strange, simple power of being human. Alien scouts hovered silently above Earth, their sleek ships almost invisible against the blue and green planet. From their vantage points, they observed the surface with clinical precision, expecting chaos and fear. They anticipated humans panicking, governments scrambling, and cities descending into disorder under the looming threat of invasion. Instead, they saw something entirely different. Across continents, humans moved with purpose and coordination. Teams of scientists, engineers, and aid workers collaborated on solving crises, whether it was repairing infrastructure, distributing resources, or managing the frightened crowds. Even ordinary citizens helped neighbors and strangers alike, sharing information, food, and guidance. The aliens watched humans navigate complex problems without central command, improvising solutions on the fly, adapting to changing circumstances with remarkable speed. There was no single leader directing every action, yet every effort seemed connected, as if a collective understanding tied people together in a network far beyond the aliens' comprehension. They observed human empathy in action, parents comforting children, doctors risking themselves to care for the sick, and communities uniting to protect one another from danger. The scouts tried to calculate this behavior, to predict the next moves, but the results were inconsistent and unpredictable. Algorithms failed when tested against human reasoning because humans did not act purely for efficiency or survival. They acted from a mixture of compassion, logic, and instinct. The aliens also noticed long-term strategies that did not rely on immediate aggression or power. Humans coordinated through dialogue, planning initiatives that might take weeks or months to succeed, yet every action contributed to stability and problem-solving. There was patience in their approach, a willingness to negotiate, listen, and learn from mistakes, something the alien command structures, accustomed to orders and obedience, struggled to understand. Creative thinking was everywhere. Engineers improvised tools, scientists discovered new methods under tight constraints, and communities devised ways to communicate rapidly without centralized technology. It was clear to the alien observers that humans were not merely reacting. They were anticipating, analyzing, and solving problems in real time, often without formal leadership. Even when fear or tension arose, humans adapted, learned from errors, and cooperated with one another instead of succumbing to disorder. For the first time, the aliens realized that their assumptions about weakness were wrong. Humans were unpredictable, resilient, and extraordinarily connected. Empathy, communication, and reasoning were their weapons, intangible yet powerful. The scouts reported back to their superiors, describing behaviors they could not fully explain or model. Every report added to a growing sense of confusion among the alien fleets. A species they had expected to be primitive and easily subdued was demonstrating strategy, morality, and ingenuity. The aliens were witnessing a new form of power, one that did not rely on force, fleets, or destructive weapons, but on intelligence, unity, and the very human ability to think, adapt, and care. This understanding would slowly begin to reshape the aliens' perception of Earth. preparing the stage for a response unlike any they had encountered before. A small human delegation stepped cautiously onto the alien ship. Their uniforms simple but tidy, their faces calm yet alert. Every movement was measured, every gesture respectful yet confident. Alien sensors immediately focused on them, analyzing body language, heart rates, and micro-expressions, expecting fear, submission, or aggression. What they received instead was steady calm, clear eyes, and voices that carried a quiet authority without arrogance. The humans spoke slowly, carefully, explaining who they were, what Earth represented, and why their species valued cooperation, learning, and resilience. They did not threaten, they did not beg, and they did not exaggerate their achievements. They simply described life on Earth, families supporting each other, communities solving problems together, scientists and engineers building knowledge and technology for the betterment of all. The delegation explained that humanity's strength did not lie in dominance or destruction, but in creativity, empathy, and unity, emphasizing that even in the face of an overwhelming threat, humans preferred dialogue and understanding over violence. The aliens' scanning systems struggled to interpret these signals. Emotional readings that usually indicated fear or aggression were inconsistent, showing a mixture of calm determination, cautious respect, and subtle confidence that no algorithm could fully analyze. The delegation continued, describing cultural achievements, stories of courage, acts of compassion, and the human desire to explore, understand, and improve rather than destroy. Every statement challenged the aliens' assumptions. Humans were unpredictable yet purposeful, fragile yet resilient, emotional yet rational. The lead human spoke of values that the aliens had never prioritized: empathy, patience, moral responsibility, and the importance of connection between individuals. To the aliens, this behavior was impossible to classify. The delegation answered questions honestly, acknowledging human imperfections, mistakes, and failures, while highlighting the capacity to learn from them. When the aliens asked about potential threats or military power, the humans calmly explained that they were willing to defend themselves if attacked. But their first choice would always be reasoning and communication. The aliens hesitated, confused by the logic that did not rely solely on fear or intimidation. They had faced species who responded predictably to force, but humans were different. Every word, every pause, every small gesture seemed to carry layers of meaning beyond mere data, intentions, trust, and moral consideration intertwined with reasoning. As the delegation concluded their presentation, the alien leaders exchanged uncertain glances. The humans had not shown weakness, yet they had not threatened. They had demonstrated intelligence, sincerity, and emotional depth. Sensors flagged anomalies in stress responses, heart rhythms, and decision-making patterns that could not be predicted. The aliens were left in a state of surprise and introspection. What they had expected to be a simple negotiation with a weaker species had transformed into an encounter that challenged their understanding of power, strategy, and civilization itself. The humans stepped back, hands visible, standing ready to answer more questions, and the room felt the quiet weight of possibility that perhaps this species, unpredictable and resilient, could be reasoned with, respected, and even trusted. It was the first step toward a future neither side had anticipated, a moment where words and sincerity became more powerful than any weapon. The aliens decided to test humanity, hoping to provoke fear and aggression that would confirm their assumptions about the unstable species. Large holographic screens filled the communication chamber, displaying images of destruction, massive storms, collapsing cities, fires, and floods, each meticulously chosen to highlight human vulnerability. Military displays followed, sequences of weapons, drills, and historical conflicts designed to remind humans of their fragility in the galaxy. Alien analysts watched carefully, expecting to see panic ripple through the delegation, signs of fear, stress, or hasty reactions. But the humans remained calm. Their faces showed thought, not terror. Their movements were deliberate, not frantic. The lead human stepped forward, gestures open, voice steady, explaining each scene with clarity. "We know the dangers we face," they said, but fear alone does not help us survive. We learn, we plan, we adapt. When questioned about the images of weapons and conflict, another human replied gently, "We have armies, yes, but true strength is not in missiles or lasers. It is in understanding, cooperation, and the ability to solve problems together." The aliens blinked, literally, in disbelief. When they tried to escalate, presenting simulations of alien fleets annihilating Earth, humans responded with calm logic, pointing out vulnerabilities and showing step-by-step strategies for disaster response and collaboration. But they did not challenge the aliens aggressively. Instead, they explained calmly that survival is not just about defeating a stronger opponent, but about preparing, helping each other, and building resilience. Then, in an unexpected move, a human spoke with humor. "We might be weak in firepower," they said with a faint smile, "but we are excellent at making each other laugh while figuring out how to fix things that explode." A subtle chuckle passed through the delegation, the first human sound that carried warmth, creativity, and a hint of audacity. The aliens were unsettled. They had expected fear, panic, or blind aggression. Instead, they saw reasoning, creativity, humor, and compassion. The humans even paused to show simulations of communities helping each other during disasters, neighbors sharing resources, and teams working tirelessly to restore order after calamities. Every display, every word, challenged the aliens' concept of a weak species. For the first time, they were forced to consider that strength might exist in empathy, communication, and adaptability, qualities they had dismissed as irrelevant in war. The human delegation emphasized that survival depends not on intimidation, but on collaboration, planning, and emotional resilience. Their approach was neither naive nor passive. It was strategic, subtle, and profoundly effective. The aliens recorded every reaction, every calm response, and every logical explanation, yet their systems could not classify it. This species refused to panic, refused to act irrationally, and even found ways to inject humor and human connection into the most tense situation imaginable. By the end of the session, the aliens were no longer observing a species to be conquered, but studying one to be understood. Bewildered by the fact that beings they considered weak were quietly demonstrating an entirely new form of power, a power based not on force, but on heart, mind, and unity. Humanity had passed the test not by fear, not by violence, but by simply being itself, revealing a resilience the aliens could neither calculate nor anticipate. As the human delegation continued to respond calmly and logically, the alien commanders gathered in a sleek, high-tech control room debating furiously. Their simulations, which had always predicted quick victories against smaller, weaker species, now failed repeatedly. Every tactic they tried, intimidation, strategic threats, even manipulative maneuvers, was met with reasoning, cooperation, or clever negotiation. Humans did not react with panic or aggression. Instead, they adapted to every situation, anticipating challenges, finding solutions, and working together seamlessly. Alien leaders reviewed the reports again and again, unable to understand why their calculations had failed. Even the soldiers on the front lines began noticing inconsistencies in what they had believed to be invincible power. Some whispered among themselves, questioning orders they had followed for decades without hesitation. How could a species so weak resist, counter, and even outsmart a force designed to dominate entire worlds? The more the humans demonstrated patience and unity, the more the aliens began to doubt their own superiority. Their confidence, once absolute, wavered. Strategies that relied on brute force now seemed inadequate, and every carefully constructed plan of attack unraveled before it could even begin. The aliens had underestimated something they could not quantify: empathy, trust, and collective intelligence. Humans shared information freely, explained their motives, and acted in a way that built trust rather than fear. This behavior confused alien censors and analysts alike because it had no precedent in their experience. The commanders' discussions became longer, more conflicted, and sometimes silent as they tried to reconcile their expectations with the reality they faced. Some officers argued that humans must have secret weapons hidden somewhere, while others admitted that it wasn't a technological advantage. It was something they could not control or replicate. Even their psychological assessments failed, as humans displayed an uncanny ability to stay calm under pressure and to maintain cooperation among a population with thousands of differing opinions, all without chaos or rebellion. The alien leaders realized that every move humans made created hesitation among their ranks. Where there had once been unquestioning obedience, now there was uncertainty and fear, not of attack, but of the unknown, the unpredictable human mind and its resilience. The concept of domination itself began to lose meaning. How do you control a species that turns confrontation into collaboration, aggression into negotiation, and fear into strategy? Commanders recalculated, models crashed, and morale shifted subtly but noticeably across fleets. Humanity's approach was not passive. It was deliberate, intelligent, and humane. The aliens began to see that their assumptions about weakness, inferiority, and predictability were wrong. With every calm response, every logical negotiation, and every demonstration of unity, humans forced a shift in perspective that no weapon could have achieved. By the end of the day, the alien command structure faced a startling reality. The strongest force they had ever encountered was not a fleet of ships or a planet's arsenal. It was a species that could turn reason, empathy, and cooperation into an unbeatable advantage. Humanity had rewritten the rules of conflict without firing a single shot, leaving the aliens to reconsider everything they thought they knew about power, control, and victory. The humans, calm and deliberate, proposed something no one expected, a demonstration, not of weapons, but of their knowledge, creativity, and cooperative spirit. Representatives from Earth prepared presentations of energy technologies showing how they could harness the sun, wind, and other renewable sources efficiently to power entire cities without destruction. They explained agricultural methods that allowed communities to grow food in harsh climates, solve famine, and maintain balance with the environment. Finally, they shared ideas for planetary defense, not through attacking or dominating other species, but through predictive systems, shared resources, and rapid response networks. The aliens observed, initially skeptical, expecting hidden traps or attempts to manipulate their systems. Instead, they saw humans working openly, explaining each process with patience, humility, and logic. There was no arrogance, no boastful display of power, only clear reasoning and practical results. Alien commanders and scientists began to whisper among themselves, unsure how to interpret what they saw. Hierarchies that had always relied on fear, unquestioned authority, and strict obedience suddenly felt fragile. Younger alien officers, often assigned to study human behavior as a curiosity, found themselves admiring the humans' ability to solve complex problems without conflict. Some of them even argued with senior officers, suggesting that cooperation and shared knowledge might be a stronger approach than domination. Each human presentation was methodical but also creative, mixing science with imagination, data with storytelling. The aliens watched as humans demonstrated solutions to energy shortages, pollution, and even interplanetary communication delays, all without the need for force or intimidation. Slowly, the rigid structure of alien thinking, that strength equals control and submission, began to crumble. Conversations in alien fleets shifted from how to conquer humans to how do they do it. Humans explained that the key was collaboration. People shared knowledge freely, trusted each other, and learned from failures rather than punishing them. Observing this, even the most senior alien leaders could not hide a sense of respect mingled with unease. The demonstration continued for hours, yet the aliens were not bored. They were captivated. They realized that humans had created systems that solved problems efficiently while preserving life, dignity, and autonomy, things alien militaries often overlooked. By the end of the day, what had begun as an exercise to show strength had become a lesson in ingenuity, compassion, and intelligence. The younger alien officers began to advocate for a reevaluation of policy, proposing that alliances and learning might be more effective than conquest. The humans had not forced their will with lasers or armies. They had done it with clarity, reason, and transparency. For the first time, the alien hierarchy was not united by fear or discipline, but divided by awe and the recognition that humanity's approach to problem-solving, peaceful, deliberate, and united, was formidable in ways no weapon could match. In that moment, a subtle shift occurred across the galaxy. The humans demonstrated that true strength was not in domination, but in the ability to solve challenges, inspire respect, and foster cooperation even among those who once considered them weak. The seeds of change had been planted. The aliens had arrived expecting submission. Their fleets loomed above Earth like dark clouds, their messages filled with threats and demands. They had calculated human behavior, assuming fear, panic, or aggression would follow. Instead, they encountered calm, reasoning, and an unshakable confidence that puzzled them deeply. The human delegation, composed of scientists, diplomats, and strategists, approached the alien leaders with no weapons, no threats, no dramatic demonstrations of force. They spoke in calm, measured tones, explaining that the point of confrontation was not to dominate or destroy, but to understand and communicate. "We do not seek war," they said, "because war is never the only answer. Cooperation, reasoning, and dialogue can resolve far greater challenges than violence ever could." The aliens, trained to expect weakness in humans, were now confronted with an entirely new paradox. The species they had intended to conquer had already won without firing a single shot, without deploying fleets or weapons, without aggression of any kind. Their initial assumptions, that humans were impulsive, weak, and easily subdued, crumbled under observation. Every gesture, every word, every logical proposal from the humans contradicted their calculations. The alien commanders gathered in tense discussions, debating how to respond. Sensors, algorithms, and strategic models all failed to predict what was happening. The humans did not submit. They did not threaten. They merely showed intelligence, unity, and moral clarity. Each explanation they gave about sustainable energy, disaster prevention, planetary defense, and social cooperation revealed patterns of problem-solving the aliens could barely comprehend. It was not aggression that commanded respect, but understanding. Slowly, doubt crept into the alien ranks. Junior officers whispered among themselves, questioning the wisdom of their leader's strategy. Could it be that the species they assumed to be fragile was actually resilient, adaptable, and capable of achieving victory without violence? The human delegation emphasized that fear was never their method, but collaboration was. "You do not need to attack us to gain knowledge, nor do we need to fight you to prove ourselves. Observation, dialogue, and reasoning can achieve far more than war ever could," they explained. The aliens, confronted with undeniable logic and unshakable calm, realized that continuing their threat would no longer serve their purpose. Their ultimatum had been turned upside down. They were the ones forced to reconsider, to reflect, and to admit that their understanding of humanity had been flawed. What was meant to be an act of domination had become a moment of revelation. Humanity had shown that true power does not lie in weapons or aggression, but in clarity, empathy, unity, and intelligence. The alien commanders, facing this reversal, could not retaliate without contradicting their own reasoning. For the first time in their history, a species had demonstrated victory purely through wisdom and moral authority. The paradox was complete. Humans had won a war that never happened. And in that moment, across the alien fleets, the lesson was undeniable. Underestimate humans at your peril, for their strength is not in fire or metal, but in thought, collaboration, and understanding. After weeks of observation, analysis, and dialogue, the Galactic Council finally reached out to Earth with a formal request. They wanted to negotiate terms. What had begun as a confrontation, filled with fear and potential for violence, had transformed into an unprecedented diplomatic moment. The human delegation prepared carefully, understanding the weight of this historic contact. Their strategy was simple yet profound. They would respond with transparency, ethics, and empathy. When the communication line opened, leaders of the Galactic Council watched as humans spoke clearly, calmly, and respectfully. There were no threats, no displays of weaponry, and no arrogance. Instead, humans explained their perspective, sharing how intelligence, cooperation, and understanding could prevent conflict and bring mutual benefits. The aliens, who had once viewed humans as a weak and chaotic species, listened in growing astonishment. Every explanation was rooted in logic, every proposal in ethical consideration, and every sentence conveyed genuine empathy for the unknown beings they were addressing. For the first time in history, the aliens faced a species whose strength was not measured in fleets, lasers, or force, but in moral clarity, reasoning, and strategic patience. Discussions moved quickly from hypothetical terms of surrender to practical considerations, and the humans outlined conditions that prioritized fairness, respect, and continued dialogue. They emphasized that submission was not humiliation, but an opportunity to learn and collaborate. The Galactic Council, initially expecting defensiveness or aggression, found themselves amazed by the humanity displayed before them. Their internal debates revealed a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Junior officers and diplomats marveled at the efficiency with which humans conducted the negotiations, combining intelligence, patience, and ethical reasoning in a way that was almost impossible to counter. Over the course of the discussions, the aliens agreed to publicly surrender. The announcement rippled across interstellar networks, broadcasted to colonies and fleets throughout the galaxy. Images of humans and alien leaders exchanging agreements, respectful gestures and symbolic tokens of peace circulated widely, inspiring awe and curiosity. Billions of beings witnessed what had occurred. A species that had been underestimated, feared, and doubted had achieved victory without violence. The aliens themselves admitted that they had never anticipated that intelligence, moral reasoning, and collaboration could surpass brute force. Across human nations, celebrations were quiet but meaningful, reflecting pride in the principles that had guided them. Schools, research centers, and families discussed the event, recognizing that the true victory was in the approach. Calm, reasoned, ethical negotiation that respected life rather than destroying it. Historians and philosophers predicted this moment would be studied for centuries. In the galaxy, the event became a symbol of the power of thought over aggression, of ethics over intimidation. Humans had shown that wars could be prevented, enemies could be respected, and surrender could be achieved through understanding. What had begun as a threat to Earth had ended not in fire or destruction, but in dialogue, mutual respect, and the demonstration of intelligence in its highest form. Humanity had written a new chapter for interstellar relations, a story proving that wisdom, empathy, and morality could win battles that weapons never could. Years after the historic negotiations, humans became a subject of fascination across the galaxy. Alien academies taught the story of Earth's encounter with the Galactic Council as a model of diplomacy, resilience, and intelligence. Students, in distant star systems, learned how a seemingly fragile species, lacking massive fleets or advanced weaponry, could achieve what empires of thousands of worlds had failed to do: win respect without firing a single shot. The story was taught not just as history, but as a blueprint for negotiation, problem-solving, and leadership. In lecture halls filled with alien cadets, instructors highlighted how humans combined calm reasoning, empathy, and patience, showing that collaboration and ethical decision-making could triumph where aggression could not. Across colonies, communication networks replayed the famous moments, humans presenting facts without fear, offering solutions without arrogance, and negotiating with transparency and fairness. Scholars analyzed every move, every word, and every gesture, trying to understand the mindset that allowed a species underestimated for centuries to emerge as a force of moral and intellectual strength. On Earth, humans continued to advance, sharing their philosophy with other civilizations, inviting dialogue rather than confrontation, and demonstrating that true power lies in understanding and cooperation. Governments adopted policies inspired by those interstellar lessons, emphasizing diplomacy and problem-solving over military escalation. Children in schools learned that the story of the first peaceful surrender was more than a historical event. It was a lesson in patience, ingenuity, and moral courage. Scientists, engineers, and leaders reflected on how unity and clear thinking could solve conflicts that brute force could only worsen. Across the galaxy, alien leaders began to rethink old strategies of domination, realizing that their greatest victories might come not from conquest, but from alliances built on mutual respect. The humans' approach created a ripple effect, shaping interstellar politics for generations. Treaties were drafted differently, conflicts were approached with dialogue first, and colonies that once feared human unpredictability now respected it as a sign of intelligence and strength. The story of Earth became a legend, told in every fleet, every academy, and every diplomatic mission. A reminder that strategy, empathy, and collaboration could achieve results that intimidation and violence never could. Historians remarked that the humans had rewritten the rules of engagement for the galaxy, proving that true power is not measured in destruction, but in understanding. Monuments were erected on several planets, not for battles won with lasers or missiles, but for ideas, negotiation, and patience, values that had preserved peace and changed civilizations forever. Across time and space, humanity's legacy endured as a shining example. A species small in size but vast in wisdom, capable of turning fear into respect, conflict into dialogue, and threats into opportunities for cooperation. The galaxy remembered the lesson clearly: brains, collaboration, and understanding can succeed where weapons fail, and the humans who taught it left a mark that would influence generations across worlds, ensuring that the power of intellect and empathy would guide interstellar history for centuries to come.